Self-talk can be helpful or harmful depending on how you practice that or whether you're even aware of the ways you talk to yourself. As human beings, we are very comfortable with external communication, how we talk to people when they bring problems to us, how we talk to people during social engagements when we are loving, suffering, grieving, and all of those other external conversations. We have that internal voice that constantly speaks to us about our identity, about our situations, our mistakes, our goals, and the way we talk to ourselves can be helpful or harmful. Are you even aware of that internal monologue? What is it saying to you? How do you talk to you? How do you listen to you? Language has many themes and tones. Sometimes we are seductive. Sometimes we are comforting. Sometimes we challenge, we are loud, we cry, and knowingly or unknowingly, all of those things go on in our lives. And it's very important to understand and master those things so that we can talk to ourselves in a way that gives us comfort, healing, in a way that pushes us, in a way that defines beautiful identities for us, in a way that helps us understand ourselves, challenge, okay, motivate, empower, heal, depending on what that voice is saying, at what time we choose to say those things, and the impact that it has for us in terms of emotions, identities, and whether or not it urges us to do things or holds us back. Self talk can be a whisper in your ear to say that you're not good enough for that action or that you're not going to succeed in that venture. Okay, that assumes that we already know the future. And sometimes we whisper those things to ourselves like magicians who say that we must not do that thing because it's not going to end up right. And that keeps us back in our tracks. But how do we know? How do you know that you're not going to be able to do that thing? And I think if we start to understand what we say to ourselves when we say those kind of things to ourselves, and then figure out whether those voices, those words, those whispers are true, and how we came to those conclusions, then we could be able to cope better in situations of fear, anxiety, trouble, or other ways in which those voices in our heads influence us. As human beings, we have capacity to show up differently in different situations with different people or under different circumstances, but that generally works better with external relationships. Sometimes you can be the motivator, you can talk people into things, you can talk people out of misery, you can be seductive, you can be comforting, you can be educating. But it's easier for us to manifest those different aspects of speech and language with external people than with ourselves. And we need to be able to understand how we show up for ourselves as the lover. Okay, how do you love you in happy and sad times, in times of mistake and times of success? How do you speak to yourself in those tones or voices, or even just how you ignore that person behind the mistake? We need to get better at harnessing those voices that show up meaningfully for us instead of feeding the voice of fear, the voice of anger, insult, minimization, without even realizing that those massive voices exist inside of us, speak to us, command us, move us on without necessarily saying any words out loud. Self talk goes on in our lives all the time, but sadly, for individuals, it can be negative. But if you start to think about it, start to notice how you talk to yourself, how you show up during mistakes, during success, then you can start to influence yourself more. You can notice the triggers, you can actually start to be more conscious, more reflective, and more realistic, challenging those doom and gloom moments when you assume that things will not go through, knowing that you cannot predict the future, and calling yourself out when those thoughts start to surface during your planning, during your visualization, during your manifestation. You can tell yourself that it will happen because that negative voice cannot predict the future.